Absinthe, the green fairy's wild ride. Hey curious minds and day drink philosophers, grab your favorite glass water, wine, or something with a questionable history, and let's talk about the drink that made artists hallucinate, politicians panic, and bartenders legends. Welcome to Absinthe, the green fairy's wild ride. Because long before it became a banned bottle collecting dust on a shelf, absinthe was the beating, Bohemian heart of Europe. It turned medicine into myth, Paris into a dreamscape, and hangovers into moral crusades. So let's pull back the curtain on the green glow that started it all. Switzerland, 1790. The apothecary's secret. You open your eyes to crisp mountain air and the scent of herbs drying in a wooden shack. It's 1790, and we're in the Val de Travers Valley of Switzerland, a place so peaceful it feels like time naps here. Inside a small cottage, a French doctor named Pierre Ordinaire stirs a bubbling copper pot. He's not a mad scientist, at least not yet. He's a refugee from the chaos of the French Revolution, an exile with a medical degree, a powdered wig, and far too much curiosity. His goal? To make a tonic that heals everything: fever, indigestion, melancholy, maybe even heartbreak. On his work table lies a collection of wild herbs: anise, fennel, hyssop, and a bitter plant that smells like forest fire and mint had a secret child, wormwood. He pours high-proof alcohol into the mix. The herbs hiss, the color deepens to emerald, and the scent sharpens, sweet, sharp, dangerous. When he raises the spoon to taste, the liquid bites back. But the doctor grins. He's created something new, a drink that hums like electricity. He calls it the tonic that wouldn't stay medicinal. Ordinaire sells his potion to local pharmacies, who bottle it in green glass and label it as universal medicine. The villagers love it. It soothes the stomach, lifts the mood, and makes life in a remote valley a little less grey. Soon everyone's sipping the doctor's cure, not for illness, but for fun. And when anything tastes that good, medicine doesn't stay medicinal for long. Two sisters, Henriette and Marguerite Henriot, start brewing their own batches. Their version tastes smoother, a little more floral. When the doctor dies, they keep his recipe alive, passing it to a distiller named Major Dubide, who partners with his son-in-law Henry Louis Pernod. Yes, that Pernod. The name that'll one day be stamped on café awnings across Europe. By 1805, they open the first commercial absinthe distillery in Cuvette, Switzerland. Copper stills gleam, barrels clink, and green glass bottles march out by the hundreds. The green fairy is stretching her wings. Absinthe crosses the border. It doesn't take long for soldiers to notice. In the 1840s, French troops stationed in Algeria are issued absinthe rations to purify their water and lift their spirits. The soldiers return home with a new addiction, and Paris catches the fever. By 1850, cafes along the Boulevard Saint-Germain serve the drink at every hour. 5 o'clock becomes known as "You revert the green hour." You're standing at a zinc bar watching the ritual. The bartender pours a measure of green liquid into a tulip glass, balances a slotted spoon on top, lays a sugar cube on it, and drips ice-cold water until the emerald turns cloudy white. The French call it la louche, the clouding. It's chemistry and theater rolled into one. The drink smells like licorice and danger. The first sip hits your tongue like frost and fire. You're not sure whether to toast the doctor or call an exorcist. The green fairy's promise. By mid-century, absinthe isn't just a drink, it's a lifestyle. Posters promise creativity in a glass. Artists claim it sparks visions. Writers say it opens the mind. Cafes overflow with dreamers. A poet with ink-stained cuffs mutters, "Absinthe makes the heart see what the eyes cannot." Someone writes it down, and suddenly it's a slogan. The green fairy La Fée Verte becomes an icon, a luminous spirit with translucent wings, whispering inspiration to anyone brave enough to drink deeply. But behind the romance, wormwood hides its bite. The compound thujin in the plant is rumored to cause hallucinations, madness, even murder. No one can prove it, but in 19th century Europe, rumor spreads faster than truth and twice as strong as liquor. The artist's muse. You step through a haze of tobacco smoke into a Paris café in the 1860s. Gaslights flicker. The air hums with laughter, argument, and the clink of glasses. At one table, Edouard Manet sketches the bored gaze of a woman with an untouched glass before her. Across the room, a young Vincent van Gogh stares into the milky swirl of his own drink, eyes reflecting green fire. Writers like Baudelaire and Verlaine call it liquid poetry. The bourgeoisie call it degeneracy in a bottle. But the artists don't care. They toast to the muse that keeps them awake, alive, and occasionally insane. Every generation needs its scandal, and the green fairy delivers. The The science of seduction. Why did absinthe feel different? Because it was different. It was stronger, usually 60–70% alcohol, and flavored with anise, fennel, and wormwood oils that gave it both aroma and mystery. Unlike wine, which dulls you, absinthe sharpens. The caffeine from coffee made you chatty, but it made you perceptive, or so it seemed. In reality, the visions came from overindulgence. Mix high-proof spirits with 19th-century malnutrition, bad lighting, and creative desperation, and hallucinations were practically inevitable. But the myth was too delicious to fact-check. By 1870, France was producing 36 million liters of absinthe a year. By 1910, that number would triple. The fairy had gone from folklore to full-blown epidemic, and the world was about to lose its mind over it. The hour of the green. It's the late 1800s, and France is buzzing like a beehive dipped in alcohol. 5 o'clock becomes sacred. It's not just happy hour, it's the green hour, el heure verte, when cafes fill with the hum of conversation, the scrape of chairs, and the perfume of anise on the breeze. You're sitting outside a cafe on the boulevard Montmartre. Waiter's vest gleams, the gaslights flicker, and every table glows with that unmistakable emerald haze. The city is alive, industrial and modern, artistic and absurd. And through it all, absinthe flows like watercolor across a canvas. The bourgeois sip it in moderation, pretending it's sophistication. The artists gulp it like salvation. The workers, they can't afford moderation. They drink to forget the soot and the grind. Everyone has their reason for loving the green fairy. Everyone has their excuse. And for a while, no one sees the cracks forming. The industrial buzz. By 1880, absinthe isn't a ritual, it's an industry. Whole factories churn out bottles by the million. Posters plastered across Paris walls show ethereal women dancing in clouds of green mist, serving absinthe to awestruck mortals. You can smell the irony in the air. What started as a monk's elixir is now capitalism in liquid form. Every brand claims to be the true absinthe. Some are elegant. Others are poison in disguise, made with cheap alcohol and copper sulfate to fake that signature emerald hue. Street vendors sell shots for pennies. Soldiers spike their rations. Artists toast to the revolution while housewives sneak a sip in the kitchen, telling themselves it's medicinal. The fairy's wings are everywhere on cafe signs, matchboxes, and gossip columns. But behind the shimmer, the whispers begin. It's addictive. It drives men mad. The French wine industry, still recovering from a catastrophic grape blight, fans the flames. Pamphlets appear claiming absinthe turns good men into murderers, good women into widows. Never mind that wine can do the same. This is marketing warfare. The Great Green Panic. You're leafing through a Paris newspaper in 1905. The headline screams, "Absinthe, the devil's drink." Below it, a story of horror. A Swiss farmer named Jean Lanfray murders his family after a drinking binge. The temperance leagues leap on the case like vultures on a carcass. Never mind he'd also consumed brandy, wine, and beer. The narrative is set. It was the absinthe that made him do it. Doctors warn of absinthism, a new disease supposedly unique to absinthe drinkers. Symptoms: tremors, hallucinations, madness, and crime. Science disagrees, but panic sells papers. Politicians smell opportunity. By 1906, Switzerland bans absinthe. Belgium follows, then the Netherlands. France hesitates, torn between tradition and fear. The same drink that inspired its artists now embarrasses its politicians. The green fairy, once a muse, becomes a menace. Her glow fades from emerald to ghostly gray. Art in a bottle. Even as society turns, the artists can't let her go. Absinthe becomes their symbol of defiance, the outlaw muse. Painters immortalize her on canvas, a lonely woman, pale and luminous, staring into her glass as if it's whispering secrets. You walk through a gallery and recognize the faces. Degas's El Absinthe, Manet's melancholy muses, Toulouse-Lautrec's cabaret sketches, all haunted by the same drink. They aren't celebrating drunkenness, they're documenting obsession. The green fairy is both angel and addiction, a reflection of the century itself, brilliant, unstable, beautiful, doomed. The ban. The year is 1915. The world is at war, and France blames everything from defeat to moral decay on its favorite scapegoat, absinthe. A decree is passed. Production, sale, and possession of absinthe are prohibited. Distilleries shutter overnight. Barrels are smashed. Copper stills dismantled. Posters torn down. The fairy doesn't die, she evaporates. Her spirit lingers in whispers, in hidden bottles, in paintings of faded green. Writers like Ernest Hemingway and Pablo Picasso, coming later, would chase her ghost across decades. But for now, Europe sobers up, or at least pretends to. The cafes switch to wine and pastis. the legal cousin that mimics the flavor without the scandal. The green hour fades into nostalgia, but myths don't end, they ferment. The fairy sleeps for nearly a century, absinthe becomes legend. People whisper about it in bars and bookstores. It drove Van Gogh mad. It made poets hallucinate. It was banned for melting your brain. Most of it's myth, but myth is the only thing stronger than proof. Meanwhile, bottles survive. Hidden in cellars, labeled as vermouth, passed from collector to collector. The color dulls, but the story glows brighter. In Switzerland and France, secret distillers keep the recipes alive, quietly defying the law. And across the Atlantic, artists romanticize it without ever tasting it. Absinthe becomes what every outlaw dreams of becoming, immortal. Science wakes the fairy, it's 1988. Scientists analyze old bottles, expecting to find insanity in liquid form. But the verdict surprises everyone. The Thujan levels in vintage absinthe are too low to cause hallucinations. Turns out, the green fairy's magic was mostly psychological, a placebo wrapped in art, myth, and strong liquor. The bans had been built on fear, not fact, and so begins the slow resurrection. In 2000, Switzerland lifts its ban. In 2007, the United States follows. France, the drink's spiritual home, hesitates but finally concedes. Once again, absinthe pours into glasses under warm cafe light. The ritual returns, the sugar, the drip, the cloudy transformation. But this time, there's no panic, just curiosity, nostalgia, and maybe a little reverence. The modern ritual: you're sitting at a polished wooden bar in Montmartre, modern-day Paris. The bartender sets out an absinthe fountain shaped like a glass swan, wings poised mid-flight. He pours a measure of pale green liquid, balances a spoon, sets the sugar cube, and opens the spigot. Drop by drop, ice water trickles through the sugar, turning the clear green opaque. The louche forms like a dream, swirling and shifting. You take a sip, sweet, herbal, bitter, ancient. You realize the green fairy never died, she just took a very long nap. Absinthe has returned, softer, safer, but still untamed in spirit. Its reputation has mellowed, but its story still hums under the surface, half cautionary tale, half love letter to human excess. Legacy of a legend: absinthe isn't just a drink, it's a mirror. It reflects our obsession with beauty, danger, and the thin line between inspiration and insanity. It's the elixir that promised art but delivered addiction, the fairy that gave wings but sometimes claws. Even today, bartenders reenact the ritual, artists borrow the imagery, and travelers order it just to say they did. Few taste the myth, they taste history. The green fairy's wild ride reminds us that everything intoxicating, whether art, ambition, or alcohol, can lift us or destroy us depending on how much we pour. Welcome back to Montmartre, dreamers and troublemakers. You can smell paint, tobacco, and revolution in the same breath. It's Paris, 1890, where everyone's broke, brilliant, and 2 drinks away from rewriting art itself. The city hums like a piano left open in the sun, and the note vibrating through it all is absinthe. The city that never sobers you. Step off a rattling tram onto the cobblestones of the Boulevard de Clichy. The Eiffel Tower, still a newcomer, pierces a pale sky. The afternoon smells of roasted chestnuts and possibility. Street vendors shout, carriages rattle, painters drag easels through the chaos like knights carrying banners. Montmartre is the hilltop heart of it all: cheap rent, cheaper wine, and the promise that genius might actually pay next week. Every doorway hums with energy. Music leaks from cafes, laughter from the cabarets. And somewhere inside each smoky room sits a glass of green fire, glowing like bottled inspiration. Le Chat Noir. Push open the black-painted door and step into Le Chat Noir, the world's first true Bohemian cabaret. The air inside is thick with tobacco and talk. The pianist's tune tangles with the clink of glasses and the sound of someone reading terrible poetry with far too much confidence. You take a seat. The waiter doesn't ask what you want. He just brings absinthe. A small glass, a slotted spoon, a sugar cube balanced like a dare. Water drips slow from a crystal carafe, the liquid swirling from emerald to milky jade. The crowd applauds the transformation as if it's theater, and in a way it is. At the next table, Henry de Toulouse-Lautrec sketches a dancer mid-twirl, lines as quick as the heartbeat of the room. A journalist argues about politics with a painter who hasn't paid rent in months. Every idea in the city seems to start here, loud, messy, half-drunk, and entirely sincere. The writers and the fairy, the poets, treat absinthe like a spiritual Wi-Fi connection. Verlaine and Rimbaud debate eternity one moment, then throw glasses the next. Baudelaire calls it the green witch. Oscar Wilde drops in on a visit and claims that after the first glass you see the world as you wish it were, and after the second you see it as it really is. You take a sip just to test the theory. The bitterness bites, the sugar softens it, and suddenly the gaslight looks like dawn and every conversation feels like prophecy. Outside, the city glows not because of electricity, but because thousands of tiny cafes are lit by the same potion. Absinthe isn't a drink anymore, it's a social network made of mouths and minds instead of screens. Dance of the Muse down at the Moulin Rouge, the cancan is chaos and choreography rolled into one. Dancers' skirts bloom like explosions of color, painters sketch them mid-kick, trying to capture motion with brushstrokes. The audience is a cocktail of bankers, beggars, soldiers, and dreamers, all laughing in the same language. On stage, the light catches a glass of absinthe on the pianist's stand, turning it into a spotlight of its own. Offstage, the same drink fuels whispered confessions and bold declarations. Every toast begins with hope and ends with a new idea for a painting, a poem, or a scandal. The Green Fairy has become Paris's unofficial patron saint of courage. The ritual of time mourning in Montmartre is brutal. The cobblestones echo with hangovers and promises to quit. But by late afternoon, the ritual begins again. Bartenders polish their fountains, waiters line up sugar cubes like soldiers, 5 o'clock hits, and the city exhales into another green hour. Absinthe is the metronome of Parisian life. It keeps rhythm for the painter's brushes, the writer's pens, and the dancer's heels. The ritual is comfort, rebellion, and routine all at once, a ceremony for people who don't believe in order but still crave meaning. The science of inspiration, you wander into a backstreet apothecary where the shelves gleam with bottles. The pharmacist explains that wormwood contains thujone, a compound said to open the mind. You nod, pretending to understand chemistry, but really just admiring how sunlight turns the bottles into stained glass. Science can't prove inspiration, but that's never stopped anyone. Maybe the brilliance isn't in the molecules, but in the permission the drink gives to dream out loud, to see color where others see gray. By sunset, you're back on the hill, watching Paris shimmer below. The Green Fairy dances somewhere in that glow, her laughter tangled with the music of the city. The café as church cafés of Montmartre aren't just watering holes, they're temples. You don't enter for refreshment, you enter for revelation. Instead of hymns, there's chatter. Instead of communion wine, there's absinthe. Every table is a pulpit and every regular a preacher. The rules are simple. Bring an opinion, a sketchbook, and at least one dramatic hand gesture. Politics, philosophy, gossip, all are welcome, provided you deliver them with flair. In a world where newspapers still smell of ink and printing presses, the café is the internet, loud, contradictory, and gloriously human. You sip, listen, and realize something magical. This is democracy in liquid form. Everyone's equal in the eyes of the Green Fairy, the painter, the count, the runaway seamstress. It's the great social solvent, and for a while it feels like paradise. The rivalries of genius, every paradise has its devils, and here they wear berets. Montmartre's artists feud like prizefighters. One night, Lautrec ridicules a rival's poster. The next, someone adds moustaches to his latest work in revenge. Absinthe fuels inspiration, but it also shortens tempers. At a corner table, 2 young painters argue over who discovered modern color. Their voices rise, chairs scrape. A poet mediates with the diplomacy of a man holding a drink he doesn't want to spill. Moments later, they're toasting again: art, friendship, forgiveness. That's absinthe's real trick. It turns conflict into collaboration before breakfast. You leave the café dizzy, amused, and faintly aware that genius and madness might share the same bar tab. Posters, paint, and performance. Paris becomes a gallery without walls. Lautrec's posters for the Moulin Rouge splash across lampposts, their acid yellows and electric reds announcing that art is no longer confined to frames. Painters like Degas capture café life with the same seriousness once reserved for kings. The city itself becomes the masterpiece, loud, imperfect, and thoroughly caffeinated by absinthe. Advertising borrows the fairy's glow. Absinthe, Pernod inspiration in a glass. Even the moralists, secretly fascinated, can't resist depicting it. Each new scandal just makes the drink more glamorous. The more society frowns, the more Montmartre grins. Reflections in the glass. Late at night, you stare into your own glass. The candlelight flickers through the cloudy green and turns it to opal. You see faces in it, friends, lovers, the ghost of that doctor in Switzerland, all swirling together like stories unfinished. Absinthe has become more than a flavor, it's a mirror. It shows you what you want most and what you fear most, sometimes in the same sip. That's why artists adore it. It refuses to lie. And maybe that's why governments will soon decide it's too honest for comfort. Moralists on the march across town, pamphlets begin to circulate. The Green Plague. Illustrations show men collapsing, women wasting away, children staring wide-eyed as fathers drown in absinthe. Preachers thunder from pulpits, doctors warn of absinthism. The word sounds scientific enough to terrify polite society. Newspapers print wild statistics that half of France is hooked, that wormwood burns holes in the brain. No one checks the math. Fear never needs footnotes. You watch a debate in a cafe, a journalist arguing for freedom, a priest for purity. The waiter keeps pouring. Outside, the posters of dancing fairies notice the walls with warnings of demons. The war for the soul of France has begun, and its battlefield is the bar. The last bright hour, but tonight, no one cares about panic. It's summer, the gaslights hum, and the city glows gold. Painters still paint, poets still argue, and someone is always laughing too loud. You raise your glass one more time and taste everything that makes Paris Paris: risk, beauty, brilliance, and the faint aftertaste of doom. The green fairy flits above the tables, invisible but undeniable, whispering the same promise she made to that lonely doctor a century ago: I can make you see the world differently. And for now, that's enough. The demon drink, panic and prohibition gather round, caffeine converts and cocktail philosophers. Paris might still be drunk on brilliance, but Europe's waking up with a moral hangover. What began as art, ritual and rebellion is about to be declared a national emergency, because nothing terrifies politicians more than citizens who are having too much fun. When morality needed a villain, it's the 1890s, and the Green Fairy has become the scapegoat for everything wrong with modern life. Crime, absinthe; adultery, absinthe; painters cutting off ears, you guessed it, absinthe. You can't throw a sugar cube without hitting someone blaming their bad choices on wormwood. The newspapers adore it. Paris in peril, screams one headline. Society dissolves in green cloud, cries another. Absinthe becomes the Kardashian of its day, infamous, seductive, and blamed for everything from economic collapse to moral decay. You can almost hear the outrage echo through the polished halls of Parliament. Something must be done about all this fun. Committees of concern enter the moral reformers, an army of well-dressed buzzkills armed with pamphlets and moral superiority. They form committees with names longer than your grocery list: the League Against the Green Poison, the National Federation for Temperance and Family Values, and of course, Mothers United for the suppression of spirits that make their husbands late for dinner. They hold rallies, distribute flyers, and deliver fiery speeches in church halls about the dangers of a liquid Satan. Someone even suggests banning cafes altogether. The room gasps, not at the idea of censorship, but at the thought of skipping their morning espresso. Still, fear spreads faster than facts, and soon every sip of absinthe tastes faintly of guilt. The sort of science decides to weigh in sort of. A few overworked chemists and ambitious doctors start testing wormwood extracts on mice. The mice, unsurprisingly, don't take it well. They twitch, panic, and occasionally pass out. Conclusion. Absinthe causes insanity. The part they forget to mention: those poor rodents were drinking enough alcohol to make a rhinoceros weep, but nuance doesn't sell papers. Doctors warn, one sip away from madness becomes the headline of the year. Never mind that France drinks 20 times more wine than absinthe. Apparently, wine inspires culture, but absinthe inspires chaos. It's the perfect hypocrisy, moral outrage with a hangover. Wine industry strikes back. If you ever want to understand history, follow the money and, in this case, follow the vineyard. In the 1860s, a tiny insect called phylloxera devastated France's grape harvests. For a while, absinthe replaced wine as the national drink. Now that the vines have recovered, the winemakers want their customers back. They start funding anti-absinthe propaganda like it's a national sport. Posters show skeletal fairies whispering in men's ears, turning them into murderers. Pamphlets compare wormwood to opium. One famous print shows a woman turning green as she drinks, her reflection a demon. It's brilliant marketing: sell fear to sell wine. And it works. The ordinary drinker, meanwhile, you're just trying to enjoy your 5 o'clock ritual. You sit at your favorite cafe, order your usual, and notice the waiter giving you a nervous smile. He's heard the rumors, too, that absinthe corrodes the brain, that thujan eats away your sanity molecule by molecule. You shrug and take a sip. It still tastes like rebellion, sweet, bitter, alive. You're not hallucinating, you're just tired of moral lectures. But outside, the world is changing. Some cafes are closing early. Others rename the drink Herbal Spirit to dodge the inspectors, and the Green Fairy starts looking over her shoulder. The Lanfray incident, then it happens. 1905, Switzerland. A farmer named Jean Lanfray commits a horrible crime. He murders his wife and daughters after a long day of drinking. Tragic, yes, but what does the press latch onto? That he'd had 2 glasses of absinthe earlier. Never mind the 6 glasses of wine, brandy and coffee laced with cognac. Those details are conveniently edited out. Within days, the story spreads across Europe. The absinthe murder, Lanfray's trial, becomes a circus. The Green Fairy is declared guilty by association. Politicians finally have their excuse, the moralists cheer, and the poor vineyards pop their corks in celebration. The ban hammer falls, the dominoes start to fall. Switzerland bans absinthe outright. Belgium follows. The Netherlands nods in moral agreement. And then France, the land that invented the ritual, painted its muse, and built a culture around it, turns its back. In 1915, as World War I rages, the French government declares absinthe a threat to national productivity. They claim it weakens soldiers, corrupts morals, and undermines the republic. In other words, it makes people interesting, and that's bad for discipline. Distilleries are raided, posters burned, copper stills smashed to scrap. The Green Fairy is driven underground, replaced by tamer cousins like pastis and anisette. The bars stay open, but the magic is gone. The great irony here's the twist no one saw coming. Banning absinthe doesn't stop drinking, it just changes the label. Within months, the same distilleries are producing legal imitations under new names. The taste is similar, the ritual identical, only the branding safer. Moral victory achieved, public health still terrible, but the politicians pat themselves on the back anyway. You can almost hear the speech. Citizens, we have defeated degeneracy. Cue applause, followed by everyone quietly sneaking home to drink something stronger. The Green Fairy in exile absinthe doesn't vanish, she emigrates. Hidden bottles cross borders in suitcases and secret compartments. Writers and artists keep the ritual alive in whispers. In smoky backrooms, they raise contraband glasses and toast in defiance to the fairy who flew too close to reason. The drink becomes legend, a symbol of rebellion, art, and the eternal war between joy and judgment. Even Hemingway, decades later, will chase her ghost in Spanish cafes. Every generation rediscovers her, like a banned book you can't resist opening. Lessons never learned. Looking back, you realize absinthe wasn't destroyed by science, it was undone by storytelling. The same imagination that made it famous made it forbidden. The posters that once sold beauty now sold fear. The fairy didn't fall from grace, she was framed. It's a story as old as civilization. If something brings joy, someone will call it dangerous. If something inspires art, someone will demand regulation. And if something tastes this good, someone will definitely write a law about it. The fairies return. From myth to modern bar, the silence after the storm. Picture Europe in the 1920s. The war is over, the champagne is flowing, and yet a quiet shadow lingers where the Green Fairy once danced. Bars still pour, but it's wine and whiskey now. Absinthe bottles sit dusty on forgotten shelves, their labels curling like old secrets. You stroll through Montmartre, and it feels like the color has drained out of the walls. The artists still paint, but they drink cautiously. No one wants to be accused of green madness. The cafes have lost their glow, as if someone dimmed the lights on purpose. Absinthe has become a ghost story, a cautionary tale whispered between generations. The moralists claim victory, the vineyards boom, and the world moves on. But legends never die, they just ferment. Mythology in a bottle. Over the next 50 years, absinthe becomes myth. Writers name-drop it like a forbidden lover. Hollywood romanticizes it, painting smoky rooms and tragic geniuses, all under that emerald glow. Every retelling adds new powers. Some say it causes hallucinations, others that it opens creative portals. Science disagrees, but science rarely wins bar arguments. Absinthe lives on in rumor, the drink that drove Van Gogh mad, the elixir of genius, the demon in a glass. Its history rewritten by gossip, sold as mystery, packaged as rebellion. By the 1960s, tourists in France can still find absinthe substitutes, under-the-counter anise liqueurs that look the part but lack the fairy's bite. The word itself becomes a spell. Say it, and you feel sophisticated, dangerous, and a little doomed. The scientists crash the party then. The 1980s arrive with big hair, louder music, and the irresistible urge to fact-check everything. Chemists crack open vintage bottles and run the tests moral crusaders never bothered to do. The results: no demons, no madness, just perfectly normal alcohol with a dash of bitterness. The dreaded thujan, the compound blamed for hallucinations, is barely present. You'd have to drink an entire barrel to see fairies, and by then you'd be seeing paramedics instead. Suddenly, a century of paranoia looks ridiculous. The bans weren't science, they were marketing. The green fairy was innocent all along. The great rehabilitation, Switzerland blinks first. In 2000, the country that once condemned absinthe as moral poison quietly legalizes it again. Distillers dust off old family recipes, copper stills glint like new coins. By 2005, France follows suit. America lifts its ban in 2007, and bartenders everywhere cheer like they've just found religion. You can almost hear the ghost of Dr. Ordinaire whispering, "Told you so." The revival isn't wild or decadent, it's reverent. Modern distillers chase authenticity, recreating 19th century formulas right down to the herbs from the Val de Travers Valley. They measure, test, label, and lecture. For once in absinthe's history, responsibility becomes fashionable. The new ritual: it's evening in a modern Paris bar. The decor is a mix of retro posters and minimalist chic. Behind the counter, a bartender performs the old ritual with surgical precision. A pour of emerald liquid, the slotted spoon, the sugar cube, the slow drip of ice water. The crowd watches, phones ready to film the louche as it clouds like a magic trick in slow motion. You take a sip. It's lighter, cleaner, and, let's be honest, safer. But the flavor carries memory, licorice, fennel, wormwood, and history. You can taste the rebellion under the refinement. Across the bar, two art students argue about whether Lautrec or Van Gogh would have thrived in the age of Instagram. The green fairy smiles from every glass. She's found her audience again. Absinthe in pop culture, the 21st century turns the fairy into an influencer. She shows up in movies Moulin Rouge, From Hell, Dracula. Music videos bathe in green light. Bars from Prague to Tokyo host green hour parties with neon fountains and ironic mustaches. It's kitsch, sure, but it's survival. Every generation remixes her myth, turning tragedy into trend. And through it all, the ritual endures. Because absinthe isn't about intoxication, it's about imagination. It's the drink you order when you want to feel connected to the ghosts of genius. The world wakes up today. Absinthe is distilled everywhere. France, Switzerland, the US, Australia, even small craft houses in Japan. Each bottle tells its own version of the legend, some sweet, some bitter, all proud of their once-banned heritage. Tastings become seminars on history. Bartenders quote poets instead of recipes. Travelers visit the Val de Travers like pilgrims at a holy site, tasting the past one measured pour at a time. The fairy that once haunted Europe now hosts global meet and greets. She's gone from outlaw to ambassador. What the fairy taught us looking back, you realize absinthe's story was never just about a drink. It was about the eternal tug-of-war between control and curiosity, between the people who want to taste life and those who want to regulate it. Every generation finds its own green fairy, something dazzling, misunderstood, a little dangerous, and too human to outlaw for long. Maybe that's why absinthe endures, because it reminds us that art, freedom, and even foolishness are worth defending. And that the real hallucination was ever believing we could ban creativity. The final pour, the bartender refills your glass, the last light of evening glinting off the liquid like liquid emerald. You lift it, watch the swirl, and think of all the hands that held this ritual before you. Soldiers, poets, painters, exiles, rebels. Every sip is a toast across time. You raise your glass to Dr. Ordinaire in his mountain cottage, to the artists of Montmartre, to the banned bottles hiding in attics, and to the modern dreamers keeping the fairy alive. You take a sip and the world tilts, not with drunkenness but with understanding. History doesn't end, it loops, refills, and repeats. The last word, so here's your takeaway: curious minds and day drink philosophers. The green fairy wasn't madness in a glass, she was freedom distilled. She dared people to think, to feel, to imagine, and that scared the sensible. And maybe, just maybe, that's the secret behind every great story. It starts as an experiment, gets banned for being too much fun, and eventually returns smarter, wiser, and still just a little wild. Until next time, raise your sugar cubes high and toast to the troublemakers who make life interesting. Because the world will always need a little color swirling in the glass.